Hi everyone, Dr. Suneel Dhand, medical doctor. Welcome to another video. I want to go over something really important in this video. If you're over the age of 60 especially, and you're on blood pressure medications, there's a fair chance you might be over-medicated and a fair chance that you could be tapered down off these blood pressure medications with time. Now, I'm not saying that this applies to everyone, but I want to go over it with you in this video. Firstly, why you might be being over-prescribed a blood pressure medication and a blueprint to hopefully come off it, because this problem is absolutely everywhere. I see it all the time in the hospital, and I believe that it is actually a scandal. Millions upon millions of people over the age of 60, especially at the extremes of age, are being over-prescribed. And it's causing all sorts of problems. I've seen it happen in very dear family members of mine. So before I even get started, it's really important, if you're on a blood pressure medication or even more than one blood pressure medication, as lots of people are, never ever change it or stop it yourself. It is crucial that this is always done under medical supervision. Hopefully you have a good trusted doctor that you can visit, can examine you, and really look over your blood pressure readings. That is crucial. And if you don't have a good trusted doctor, never give up, because good doctors are out there. Keep looking for a doctor, especially one who has a philosophy of wanting to de-escalate medications when they're not needed. So I have written down a few notes here. So that was the first point I wanted to make, to never change any medication yourself. And the reason why I'm making this video is because I believe this problem is even more important and more prevalent in the over 60s. It's absolutely terrible. And let's back up a little bit, and then I will get to a blueprint that you can follow. So the most common cause by far of high blood pressure, which is not talked about anywhere nearly enough, is insulin resistance. And I've talked about this many times before. I won't keep going over the same thing again. I'll include a link down below to a video, or even more than one video, that I've made before on this topic. But insulin resistance is a true pandemic. And because so many people are insulin resistant, primarily due to lifestyle, the typical scenario goes like this. Someone will be put on a blood pressure medication, maybe in their 40s, and then there'll be another medication added on. And then many people by their 60s, 70s, and 80s are on 2, 3, sometimes 4 blood pressure medications. It's utterly ridiculous. So the first thing to say is that even if you're over the age of 60, the vast majority of hypertension basically is due to insulin resistance, and this can be reversed very naturally, and I've talked about that before in many videos. So that's the first thing to note, the most common cause of high blood pressure, and that's why many people who go about naturally fixing their lifestyle, their blood pressure will improve, and I've seen many people successfully come off their blood pressure meds. Okay, first point. The second point is this, that in the more extremes of age, so when we're talking about people in their late 70s, 80s, 90s, then blood pressure is often elevated due to stiffened arteries. And think about this for a moment, and this is actually backed up by research that sometimes at the extremes of age, you don't want to be too aggressive with blood pressure, because the great blood vessels naturally stiffen, and a blood pressure which is above the usual range is sometimes needed to maintain perfusion to vital organs, including the brain. So it's silly to be too aggressive with blood pressure, especially at the extremes of age. So that's the first point I want to make. We have to think about the causes of high blood pressure. So let's take a scenario. If you're somebody who's on 1, 2, 3 blood pressure pills, and you suspect that your blood pressure is really well controlled and you may not need this, this is what I'm going to recommend you do. So the first thing that I recommend is that you keep close watch on your blood pressure. Get a good home blood pressure machine if you haven't already. These are usually about $20 to $30 in the US. They're not super expensive. There's some great blood pressure machines on Amazon. I'll include a link to one down below. And I want you, if you haven't already got one, to get a blood pressure machine. And then I would like you for 2 weeks to monitor your blood pressure 3 times a day. Morning, afternoon, and evening. It doesn't have to be exactly the same time. Maybe you could vary it according to whether it's before a meal or after a meal. But broadly speaking, 3 times a day. And I want you to write this down. So 3 measurements for 2 weeks. So what would that be? That would be 3 times 14. So we're talking about 42 measurements, give or take. You can do more if you want. And that will give your doctor a very good idea of what your blood pressure is across the day. Because some people check their blood pressure only once a day in the morning, and then it can vary during the day. So it's really good to get that sort of estimate of what your blood pressure range is throughout the day. And you can either write this down, you can do it the good old-fashioned way, which I prefer, on a piece of paper in your diary, or you can make a note in your iPhone, but as long as it's all clearly documented there, and a medical professional can review your blood pressure readings. And here's what I want you to do. Then when you go in to review your blood pressure readings, take your blood pressure machine with you to the doctor's office, or GP surgery as it's called in the UK, and correlate the two. So in other words, when you get your blood pressure checked in the doctor's office, I want you to, right after, measure your blood pressure with your own machine and make sure that the value that they get and the value that you get is the same. So here's what you want to look for, because it's all very well and good, and maybe you do this and you realize that your blood pressure is elevated. Maybe it's in the 150s, 160s, 170s, in which case this may not apply because your doctor might be more concerned with blood pressure, which is too high. But I am absolutely certain that there are millions upon millions of people out there, especially over the age of 60, who, when they do this, their blood pressure will frequently be during the day. It could be in the morning, afternoon, or evening, in the low 100s. So this is a top number. The systolic blood pressure might be in the 100s. It might be in the 1-teens. And this is actually, I would say, low. Nowadays, I know that the medical profession is super aggressive. This wasn't the case a few decades ago, but every single year, it seems, the medical profession seems to be getting more and more aggressive. And of course, we know what's really going on. A lot of this is driven by the medical industrial complex and the pharmaceutical industry. Of course, a lot of money is made on prescription medications. However, what I'd like you to do, if you notice that your blood pressure is consistently in the low 100s or 1-teens systolic, have a discussion with your doctor. And especially if you think that you might not be as strong as you once were, maybe you are suffering with weakness, dizziness. I see so many people with elevated blood pressure who are on multiple blood pressure medications, and they'll frequently say, yes, I feel weak during the day, I feel dizzy, especially when I stand up. And it is because their blood pressure is fluctuating and often dropping. Maybe it's even dropping to the 90s systolic. This is a top number. This is way too low. And have a discussion with your doctor. If you have good blood pressure control, i.e. the systolic blood pressure is less than 120. I'm actually much more liberal than that, if I can put it that way. I often don't mind if the blood pressure, systolic blood pressure, is going up to the 130s, but every doctor will have their own preferences. And if your blood pressure is running in that type of range, have a discussion with your doctor, because so often what can be done, whether somebody's on 1, 2, 3 medications, certainly if they're on 2 or 3 medications or more, the blood pressure medications can start to be weaned down. And then you can note for the next couple of weeks what is happening. And I can't tell you the number of times that somebody who has their blood pressure medications lowered, it doesn't seem to make any difference to their blood pressure readings, or even sometimes stopped. And this is why I believe it's such a scandal that we're way over-treating blood pressure, especially in people over the age of 60. So if it can be weaned down, great. If a medication can be stopped, great. It should always be done under medical supervision. But let's go over again what happens if somebody has a low blood pressure. I've mentioned weakness, dizziness. People might be prone to falling. Just think about it from a logical standpoint here. If you're not getting enough blood to the brain, what do you think that's going to do to your brain cells? Of course, some research shows that there is a link to cognitive impairment. And I don't think that anybody above the age of 60, or we could even say younger, but obviously this video is focused on people over the age of 60, should be running consistently at a blood pressure where the systolic is way too low. The medical profession, as I said, seems to be getting more and more aggressive, but to me it simply makes no sense. And it makes no sense either that everybody should have the same blood pressure. Of course, we use that ideal 120/80, but of course, everybody is different. But the point of this video, if I can summarize, millions upon millions of people are being overtreated for blood pressure. They're on 1, 2, 3, 4, sometimes more pills. And they get to a certain age, blood pressure can naturally start to drop. And people have all of these horrible symptoms as a result. And it happened to a very dear family member of mine earlier this year. He said that he was feeling dizzy one day after breakfast, and we checked his blood pressure, and it was in the 70s systolic. And then we realized he'd been feeling weak in the morning for some time. He was way over-medicated, and we cut back on his blood pressure medications. His systolic blood pressure came up, And then, lo and behold, he was feeling a lot better. But this happens all the time. And unfortunately, because our healthcare system is so broken and there's not good primary care, people get put on blood pressure pills. And then things get escalated, and then there's not proper follow-up. I'm a huge believer that if you're on blood pressure pills, keep a very close eye on blood pressure at home. Keep it under surveillance, because there's a very significant chance that with age, especially if you're doing certain natural things to improve your health, you're working on your weight, you're working on your diet, you're exercising, your strength training, blood pressure can start to improve quite quickly. Okay, everyone, I hope that was helpful. Thank you for watching. Feel free to leave a comment down below. Share your stories of blood pressure in yourself or family members which may have been overtreated. If you're not already signed up for my free newsletter, please do so. We talk about a lot of issues like this in my free newsletter. I hope you're already signed up. If you're not, why not? Link down below. Also in the links down below, my website, all the other work I do, my health program, and our natural supplement store. If you enjoyed this video, you will also enjoy some of my other videos on how to naturally optimize your metabolic health. Hit the like button if you like this video, the subscribe button for more similar videos in the future, and we will speak again very soon.